Dracunculiasis is a disease mainly in Africa caused by a parasitic nematode roundworm known as guinea worm. The name comes from the Latin phrase, affliction with little dragons. Guinea worm appeared after Europeans first saw the disease on the Guinea coast of West Africa in the 17th century. The painful burning sensation experienced by the infected patient has led to the disease being called the fiery serpent. The adult female guinea worm is one of the largest nematodes known, with a length of 3 feet. The male worm is typically much smaller, about 12 millimeters compared to the female. The worm is pale white, thread-like, and soft, with a diameter of 2 millimeters. Disease transmission requires the involvement of a water flea, also known as a copepod, as the intermediate host. The female worm discharges its larvae into water where water fleas are drawn to the quick, jerky movements of the embryos. Ingested embryos leave the copepod's stomach in 1 to 4 hours by penetrating their gut. Guinea worm disease is contracted when people ingest drinking water from stagnant sources containing copepods. This is easy to do since they are invisible in the muddy water consumed in rural areas. Following ingestion, the stomach acid digests the copepods, but not the guinea worm larvae released by the copepods. Over the course of a year in the human abdomen, the immature worms pierce the intestinal wall, grow to adulthood, and mate. Sexual development of the parasite develops in 3 to 4 months. After copulation, as the fertilized female grows, the male worm dies in 3 to 7 months. The females migrate in the subcutaneous tissues towards the skin surface. As the worm moves downward, usually to the lower leg, it leads to intense pain localized in its path of travel. Victims of the disease sometimes see the worm moving beneath their skin as it prepares to break the surface. The worm creates a blister on the skin, which ruptures within 24 to 72 hours, exposing one end of the emergent worm. Infected patients often immerse the infected limb in sources of drinking water to relieve the burning sensation. Once the blister is submerged in water, the adult female releases a milky white liquid containing millions of immature guinea worm larvae, contaminating the water supply. In the water, the larvae are swallowed by water fleas and the cycle begins again. Patients become aware of worms only 8 to 12 days before eruption. General symptoms include fever, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, asthma, dizziness, and fainting. There is no known medicine or vaccine to treat guinea worm disease. The only treatment is to wind the 3-foot-long worm around a small stick to extract it out a tiny bit at a time, which is a very long and painful process. Guinea worm disease is set to become the second human disease in history, after smallpox, to be eliminated. It will be the first parasitic disease to be removed and destroyed without the use of a vaccine or medical treatment. Standard medical texts do not specifically examine the clinical impact of worm load per patient in guinea worm disease. An infected person may harbor 2 to 3 worms at a time. Others may host even more worms, all with deathly health effects. Those most affected are the poorest populations, often living in remote rural communities where people do not have access to medical care. Therefore, ulcers may take 8 weeks to heal, often becoming infected with bacteria. Each time a worm emerges, persons may be unable to work or resume daily activities for an average of 3 months. Infection does not produce immunity, and many people in infected villages suffer the disease year after year. The biggest problem towards extinction is access. It is very difficult to access southern Sudan and northern Maui, where sometimes there are no paved roads. Infection can easily be avoided, even in areas where the disease is very common, by using only water that has been filtered or obtained from a safe source. Water can be boiled, filtered through tiny woven cloth, or drank through straws like pipe filters.
Nigeria had more than 650,000 cases when former President Jimmy Carter targeted guinea worm in 1986.
It only exists in the most isolated and poverty-stricken villages in the world. We found guinea worm in 20 different countries, 23,600 villages. We've been in all of those villages.
Today, Nigeria is on a path to being recognized by the World Health Organization as free of guinea worm disease, thanks to efforts by the Carter Center to teach people how to filter water in their villages.
Because of the water supply advantages of the 1980s, the numbers of cases have reduced significantly. In addition to the water supply advantages, the national guinea worm eradication programs have also reduced the number of infected individuals in a score of endemic countries. As guinea worm eradication programs have developed in endemic countries over the last decade, there has been a shift towards more participating methods. Surveillance changed from periodic cross-sectional surveys to monthly village-based reportings, which are conducted by volunteer health workers. At the same time, the emphasis regarding control involvements has moved from facility of safe water supplied to health education. The new approach has proved very effective.
In 1986, there were some 3.5 million cases of guinea worm in 20 countries. But after health authorities succeeded in stopping transmission in a growing number of areas, by the beginning of 2006, there were fewer than 11,000 cases of guinea worm, all of them in only 9 countries in Africa, concentrated in Ghana and Sudan.
The guinea worm eradication program has been so successful that in 2006, the world was looking at just 25,217 cases. Just 3 years later, in 2009, there were only 3,190 cases, all but 15 of them in the 4 remaining widespread nations of Africa, which include Sudan, Ghana, Maui, and Ethiopia. This is the lowest number of cases since the extinction campaign began. Little more than a decade ago, it was estimated that over 3 million cases of guinea worm occurred worldwide. As of 2010, there were 1,797 cases. All 4 remaining endemic countries succeeded in reducing their case totals during this period. The global campaign has succeeded in reducing the incidence of guinea worm disease by 99% in the past 20 years. This has been accomplished by the provision of safe drinking water supplies, filtration of drinking water, chemical control for intermediate hosts, and local health education initiatives. As of 2011, the disease is endemic in Sudan, Ethiopia, Maui, and Chad. The Carter Center and partners, including the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control, aim to get rid of guinea worm disease by 2015.